Hi, this is Fern G. Carr, website www.ferngzcarr.com. Welcome to my Winnipeg Poetry Reading Series, Part 2. I was delighted to be invited to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada to do a reading to celebrate National Poetry Month. Since I'm originally from Winnipeg, I was fortunate to have friends and family in attendance, in addition to other audience members, some of whom belong to a poetry appreciation group. I'm pleased to share excerpts from my presentation. It was based on poems from my book, Shards of Crystal, along with a special Winnipeg segment which I included. The final video in this series concludes with an interesting question and answer session. Here is part 2 of 5 of my reading. Enjoy! The next chapter, Animalia, I originally wanted to call it A Walk on the Wild Side, but then I thought, you know what, that doesn't really make sense because some of these poems in this chapter are also about domestic animals, so it's a mix, so I decided to call it Animalia. And the first poem is called Convergence. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this program. The League of Canadian Poets currently has a program where they select poems by poets, and they feature them daily. It's something like the American Academy of Poetry does, and they feature them online. So this poem was recently featured by the League on March the 25th, this last March, and it's called Convergence. The intersection of a pane of sun and cloud with the faint clink of hollow bones, bewildered black eyes, feet tipped with the droplet of scarlet, rattled, numbed, a grounding paralysis felling feathers that once graced azure skies, a grounding paralysis and a fuzzy awareness of the muffled patter of mittened paws. Okay, so now, moving into, actually don't drink the water, like the comedians do. Okay, Lion on the Street, of course, now we're dealing with the bigger kitty cat here. This, unfortunately, was a true story in the news coming out of Zanesville, Ohio. And I'll read the epigraph. It's just this part here. And it says, dedicated to the animals that perished in Zanesville, Ohio. And this is called Lion on the Street. Magnificent beast, regal, ragged mane, tawny physique, muscles rippling, tail switching, menacing, menaced. Released from your ramshackle chain-link foe, the zoo, a homegrown excuse for an exotic animal preserve, an accidental abdication, your massive paws unable to cloak the click-clack of claws on concrete. Your amber eyes, not wild for the gazelles and wildebeest of the Serengeti, but wild at the sight of speeding metal and rubber, wild at the sight of your own blood and guts, stripped of your majesty, stripped of your life, royalty relinquished, just a lion on the street. Not used to all this applause. I had her. Okay. So as the, like I say, former SPCA president, I was constantly at the animal shelter, and I saw so many beautiful cats and dogs too, of course. And I just wished that I could take them all home with me, but I did take one, my sweet little girl's home. This poem, called Escape, is basically what I would categorize as the essence of being feline. Escape. Piped in elevator music, barely audible, wafts through a darkened room, full of cages, where luminous green orbs reflect the scant light. Even the dogs have refrained from yelping. They whimper in their sleep, while their feet twitch as they chase imaginary rabbits. Motionless but for her tail, swishing back and forth, she continues to stare with a look calculated to project laser beams that zap and vaporize metal bars. Their dematerialization liberation, recapturing the essence of all that is female, a feline, as she slinks into the obscurity of the night. I guess that would apply to female peacock. And what I actually did, I won't read this, it would be much too hard to read here. There's one poem that I took a picture of my cat and I photoshopped it. And I'm not as good at photoshopping as my cousin Keith is, of course. But I photoshopped it and I typed the poem around the outline of my cat. Okay, so I'm just going to read two more poems for now before I do a special segment for you. These poems are from a chapter called Relatively Speaking, so as you can guess, that's about family. This poem is unfortunately based on a true story. Now, some of you here knew my dad, so you're going to be able to relate to this. It's called My Father's Fingers. The dirty 30s. Two rough and tumbled brothers chop, chop, chop wood. Their every breath a ghost in the winter air as they chop, chop, chopped wood for a home warmed by 12 children, not coal. A home reduced to 10 by the mathematics of loss. Scars of many variants running deep and sharp, especially for the brother who steadied a log on a misshapen stump of a tree, a split second before the eager blade of an axe left its bloody wake of fingers, 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 and a misshapen stump of a hand. Okay, and then this other poem from this chapter, Twin, quite often there are humorous stories that you might hear about identical twins. They might have a test to write at school, and one twin takes the test for the other one who isn't prepared. But, it's kind of funny. But apart from these shenanigans, I thought, well, what would the psychological implications be if something terrible happened to one of the twins? So that's the premise behind this poem. Identical twins, ginger hair, freckled, a twinkle in their eye as they each pretend to be the other. Two halves of a whole, one half stalked by leukemia. Purple bruises creeping leopard-like over his body, snarling as they drag their kill away. Vigilant, his brother watches and waits for his turn. It never comes, burying him in guilt every time he passes a mirror, a living reflection of the child his parents lost. Okay, I'm going to move on to some lighter stuff before I make everybody cry here. I added a special section here in honor of being in Winnipeg, so this is a special Winnipeg/Prairie segment for the reading. One of my poems is from the book, two others aren't. The first one is called Train Whistle. Now this poem, the verse form is called a pantoum, P-A-N-T-O-U-M. I don't know if you've heard of it. It is a Malay verse form. It's actually quite tricky to write because the second and the fourth line of each verse has to be repeated as the first and third line of the subsequent verse, and so on. So the explanation might not make too much sense, but when I read the poem, you'll get the idea. And I chose that verse form because it's a very rhythmic verse form, and I wanted it to mimic the chugging of a train. Now, as I said, this particular poem isn't in the book, but it has been previously published in England and subsequently in Canada. So, here's Train Whistle. Snorting horse's breath steams in early morning chill, bleary-eyed awakening to the whistle of a train, thrusting through farmland, pregnant with fields of grain, romancing purple prairie thistle with serenades so shrill. Bleary-eyed awakening to the whistle of a train, chugging along rusty tracks with sturdy iron will, romancing purple prairie thistle with serenades so shrill, rhythmically chanting a lugubrious refrain. Chugging along rusty tracks with sturdy iron will, oblivious to the monotony of flat prairie terrain, rhythmically chanting a lugubrious refrain, swathed in semi-darkness while all is hushed and still. Oblivious to the monotony of flat prairie terrain, beckoning the horizon with his plaintive trill, swathed in semi-darkness while all is hushed and still, in muted decrescendo, it heads across the plain. Acknowledgements. All poems contained herein and Shards of Crystal photo, copyright Fern G. Carr. Convergence, Lion on the Street, Escape, My Father's Fingers, and Twin are from my book Shards of Crystal. Convergence was first published in Past Petals. Lion on the Street was first published in Miracle. Train Whistle was first published in Candelabrum. Assiniboine Park Pavilion photo by Kirk Cumming, courtesy of Wikimedia Commons. Thanks very much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, and please be sure to subscribe. For more poetry, my book Shards of Crystal is available on Amazon. Thanks again, and stay tuned for a new video every Wednesday.